we are going to start. We have finished with the morphology of the root canals. Now we are coming to switching over to the etiology of pulp diseases. Now we all know that when we are going to treat the pulp disease, one must know what are the etiological factors. So the Grossman has given the etiology is classified into the physical, the chemical and the bacterial. In the physical, there is mechanical, thermal and electrical. You know why when I used to take this topic, I used to give one hint to the students. Remember MTE. Now it is MTA, so it is MTE. So M is mechanical, T is thermal and E is electrical. In mechanical, there are again many things. That is, most important thing is trauma. The old edition of Engel has given etiology. There are 60 causes for the pulp disease. Okay, and we used to remember all those. But now we have made it simplified for you. But the most important thing in mechanical, you should know about the trauma. There may be trauma from vehicular accident, a home falling, a fight, a sports injury, and so on, so on, so on. Okay. Then second is the thermal, in which the heat produced because of the preparation of the cavities or from the restorative materials which you are going to use. So it might cause thermal damage to the pulp and lead to the pulpal disease. Electrical, we all know about the galvanism. When the galvanism is between the two dissimilar metals, so there will be a galvanism, and this electrical cause will be one of the positive factor for the pulpal disease. The chemicals, we all know, the oral cavity, all the teeth are subjected to the variety of beverages. Also the persons who are working in the acid fumes factory. So this is because of that there can be a chemical and from the restorative materials. But now a question may be asked, which is the most important cause of the pulpal disease? So it is a bacterial cause, which you should be able to answer. Now, in a brief of the rationale of endodontic treatment, for this one should know what is the philosophy behind this. So, in this, you know again the second BDS, the inflammation. You know about the inflammation, and there are only two things which you should remember. What does this inflammation do? The inflammation, first what will do? It will restrict, okay, and second, it will allow for the repair. So this changes, this slide, it shows the irritants, then there are inflammatory changes, then there are protective mechanisms and all that, and it leads to a vicious cycle of inflammation, and then it ultimately leads to the disease here I have given as a irreversible pulpitis. So this rationale of endodontic treatment, for this theory question may be asked to you, and you should be able to write this in a detail. I have taken it in a short, but you have to write in a detail. And also the endodontic implication. We all know about fish. This fish experiment is that fish has described the foci of infection as 4 zones. Here you have to draw the diagram also, which is given in the Grossman. So the first zone is zone of infection, second zone of contamination, zone of irritation, and fourth is zone of stimulation. What are all contents of there, that you have to study and write. Now the again question would be put to you is about the diseases of the pulp. Now there are many classifications, but this is clinical classification of the disease of the pulp. One of our senior examiner, when she used to come in Nagpur, sir, so she used to always ask, because every student, they used to give this clinical classification of the disease. But then she used to ask, what is Baum's classification of pulpal disease? So like that. But here I have put the clinical classification of the disease of the pulp. So here, the inflammatory diseases of the dental pulp. In this, reversible pulpitis and irreversible pulpitis. We all know, I need not go into the detail. Reversible goes back to the normalcy. Irreversible doesn't go back to the normalcy, and there are changes. So in irreversible pulpitis, symptomatic irreversible pulpitis, asymptomatic irreversible pulpitis, chronic hyperplastic pulpitis, that is called as pulp polyp, and internal resorption. The second is the pulp degeneration. Pardon me for a spelling mistake. There is to be calcific degeneration, atrophic degeneration, and there is fibrous degeneration, and the third is pulp necrosis. So this way you have to go and write the clinical classification of the pulp diseases. Now just I think I have 5 minutes, so I'll be able to tell you about only for pulp disease only 2 lesions. So because acute irreversible pulpitis. Now you are given a patient and you have to chart the case history of the patient and arrive at a diagnosis so as to plan a treatment. So for this, what should be the method of writing answer to this question, or when you are taking a case history? This will be helpful for you in both the fields. So acute irreversible pulpitis is, how do you differ? First should be the definition, then there should be the typical symptoms, because these symptoms will help you to differentiate from the other lesions, whether it is reversible, whether it is a pulpal lesion, whether it is a periradicular lesion, whether it is a reversible lesion, whether it is an irreversible lesion, whether it is an acute lesion, whether it is a chronic lesion. So symptoms, when you extracting the information from the patient, so this symptoms is it's a very important, and here where you have to apply all your theory knowledge. What is symptom? If a Viva question is asked to you, symptom is the unit of information taught by the patient at the time of history. So these symptoms with the patient of acute irreversible pulpitis, we all must have gone into it, that there is a tremendous pain. Okay, there's a postural changes and the pain lingers on. The most important thing is that it comes with the stimulus, it may not come with the stimulus. It has a habit of lingering on for a while. The patient is all awake in the night, and when he changes the posture and all, these things are, there's no way but just to rush to the dentist, maybe on a telephonic, or he has to rush to the clinic. And then the other things, the radiographic findings, you should know. So there's hardly any, you won't be able to see any periapical rarefaction for acute irreversible pulpitis. There might be some, as well as is normal. Sometimes there may be a widening of slits and widening of the PDL space can be evident. The diagnosis, as we have already known about it, that how to do the diagnosis. So in this, on the inspection, you will see a deep cavity which is extending to the pulp, or decay. Maybe a filling is there and there's a residual caries, and it is because of that also. The pulp may already be exposed or may not be exposed. Okay, but then this is again what is most important is you distinguish it from the acute and chronic reversible pulpitis by your this thing, and histopathology is also to be added. The treatment is pulpectomy, and the prognosis is favorable if the pulp is removed properly, and the prognosis for the tooth is always good. Also, there is one, I would like to take an example of question is put to you, what is chronic hyperplastic pulpitis? Okay, so for chronic hyperplastic pulpitis, so this which we have discussed is the acute lesions, and the chronic lesion is so chronic is the chronic hyperplastic pulpitis. Chronic hyperplastic pulpitis. So for this, if you have come across this cases, so here 3 things you have to remember. Okay, so first is the age of the patient. That usually the patients are of a younger type, where you have a young resistant pulp. And second point is that there is always, most of the time, there is an open cavity. Okay, and the third type is the stimulus in the form of caries is a slow and long-standing stimulus, so which causes the proliferation of the pulp tissue. So this is a chronic hyperplastic pulpitis. When you ask the patient to open the mouth, you will be seeing a proliferated pulp tissue which easily bleeds on the provocation by the probe, and then the diagnosis is evident only. Only thing, one point here I would like to share with you is that you have to differentiate it with the gingival hyperplasia. So how you will differentiate from gingival hyperplasia? For gingival hyperplasia and for chronic hyperplastic pulpitis, you have to go on checking the stock of the proliferation. For hyperplasia, if you start locating it with the help of explorer, so it will be somewhere right in the center and in the where the pulp was located. Whereas for gingival hyperplasia, it will be in the interdental area. If you compare the vascularity of both this, then the pulp polyp will be more vascular as compared to gingival hyperplasia. So there are many acute conditions, there are many chronic conditions, but this is just for example if a question is asked to you, so you should be able to write an answer from this way. I have prepared my presentation. Then the next is the diseases of periradicular tissue. So in this again a classification may be asked to you. So there is clinical classification of the disease of periradicular tissues. So it is symptomatic periradicular disease, which is symptomatic apical periodontitis associated with vital teeth, and symptomatic apical periodontitis associated with non-vital teeth. Next is acute alveolar abscess, and third is, which is very confusing with this, is the acute exacerbation of the symptomatic apical periodontitis. The second is asymptomatic periradicular disease, where the asymptomatic apical periodontitis, chronic alveolar abscess, radicular cyst and condensing osteitis, external root resorption, persistent apical periodontitis, and diseases of periradical tissues of non-endodontic origin. So here just an example of if it is asked acute apical abscess or acute alveolar abscess, again in the same way which is given in the Grossman, you have to write about the definition, its symptoms, that is the clinical features and your radiographic findings, then the diagnosis, then the differential diagnosis and the histopathology and the treatment and the prognosis of the teeth. So for this is only thing here for primary, that is acute apical abscess, you have to, how you will differentiate it from Phoenix abscess. So Phoenix abscess is the acute exacerbation of chronic lesion. So only differentiating factor, all the signs and symptoms will be of the acute abscess. But what will be the differentiating criteria is the radiograph. So on the radiograph, you will find a nice periapical radiolucent lesion, which will be the only differentiating criteria for this. So with this,